نعم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. قال المصنف رحمه الله: 39 الإلحاد في الأسماء كقوله وهم يكفرون بالرحمن.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. This is the 39th issue from Masa'il Al-Jahiliyyah. The author is mentioning Al-Ilhad fil Asma. The previous issue was Al-Ilhad fil Sifat, the attributes of Allah. This is Al-Ilhad fil Asma. What is the difference between Al-Asma and Sifat? The names and the attributes of Allah. What's the difference? Not every attribute, description of Allah is attached to a name. So Allah may be described as something, but there's no particular name attached to that description. Like when you say Allahu Shadidul Iqab, there's no particular name attached to that. Or you say Allah Azza wa Jal Yamkur bil Kafirin. There's no particular name attached to that Allah Azza wa Jal plots against the disbelievers. But every name is attached to an attribute. The opposite is not true. Every name is attached to an attribute. Yani, مثلا, when you say As-Sami', then it's attached to the attribute of hearing. When you say Al-Alim, it's attached to the attribute of Al-Ilm, knowledge. But no vice versa. Not every attribute, something you describe Allah with, has a name attached to it. So when he's talking about Ilhad fil Asma', now we're going to have two issues. Issue number one is the negation of the name itself. Some people will say this is not the name of Allah. They reject the names of Allah. Like what happened in Al-Jahiliyyah. And is now happening in this ummah. We have groups in this ummah that reject the names of Allah completely, all the names of Allah. Some reject partially, meaning they accept some of the names of Allah and they reject the rest. But all of them, they fall into that same aspect of the practices of the people of Jahiliyyah. The author brought a verse. Allah said, وَهُمْ يَكْفُرُونَ بِالرَّحْمَنِ, and they disbelieve in Ar-Rahman. Not disbelieve in Allah, but they disbelieve in the name Ar-Rahman. This is what is intended here. To disbelieve in the name Ar-Rahman. To reject the name of Ar-Rahman. Now someone may understand from this ayah that they were unfamiliar with the name Ar-Rahman, so they said we don't accept it. This is not the case. The name Ar-Rahman was very known to them. In fact, they mentioned it in a lot of their poetry. Poetry that is recorded from before Islam contains the name Ar-Rahman. They know that name. But there's a reason that is found in a story related to this verse. During the Sulh of Al-Hudaybiyah, when the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah was being written, the representative of Quraysh, Suhayl ibn Amr, as they were beginning to put down the terms, put ink on paper, as the saying goes, they started with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He said, I don't accept this. He started his objections from Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He said, we don't know this ar-Rahman. Obviously they do. But this is a type of what? Throwing your weight around, and you want to kind of like, assert some kind of dominance in the negotiation. So out of this type of hamiyya, he rejected that Allah's name Ar-Rahman be written. We don't know Ar-Rahman. Instead, write Bismika Allahumma. The Prophet agreed. Bismika Allahumma. Allah is Ar-Rahman, whether they like it or not, it doesn't change. But we want to reach some terms that are agreeable, so let's keep writing. Bismika Allahumma, be it. And this type of action has a name in Arabic. It's called Al-Juhud. Al-Juhud is when somebody denies something that they already know. Someone knows something, فَيَجْحَدُهُ. As a person says, جَحَدَنِي حَقِّي. You loan somebody money, for example, and you say, I want my money back. He says, I don't owe you nothing. You say, look me in the eye. He looks you in the eye and says, I don't owe you anything. Weren't you just sitting the other day and I counted the money and I gave it to you in your hand? He says, I don't owe you. It's called a juhud. It's called what? Juhud, jahada. And a lot of kuffar, they practice this. Al-juhud. A lot of the disbelievers, they know exactly what it is. And they're like, nope, I don't know nothing about this. Suhail ibn Amr, as we see here, he committed this act. Now, some people, from the people of knowledge, they say later on he accepted Islam. If that's the case, then may Allah be pleased with him. But we don't have 100% information on that. Now, notice how Allah worded this ayah. He said, وَهُمْ يَكْفُرُونَ بِالرَّحْمَنِ. While they disbelieve in the Rahman. The scholars, they take from this ayah and other verses as well that juhud of the truth is kufr. جحد الحق فيما يتعلق بأسماء الله وبصفاته وبحقه عز وجل وبتوحيده is kufr. So there's a type of kufr that is based on juhud. Although they know the truth, they reject it. This rejection of the truth is kufr, disbelief. What's another famous example that's also found in the Quran where Allah Azza wa Jalla has let us know that they are kuffar because of a juhud? Famous example found in the Quran. This is it. This is it. وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهَا أَنفُسُهُمْ ظُلْمًا وَعُلُوًّا. Who's being talked about here? Fir'aun and his people. Right? Allah has just said, and they rejected them. They negated them. While in their souls, they were certain that these are the signs and miracles of Allah. The cane of Musa alayhi salatu wassalam, the miracle of his hand coming out white-skinned, and so on and so forth. All these different miracles inside of their souls, inside of themselves, between them and themselves, they knew for certain no one can do this except for Allah. But outwardly, what was the reaction? Rejection. So Allah has ruled that they are disbelievers. So inward belief that doesn't match with an outward attitude of acceptance does not save anyone from the hellfire. Now, in order to escape al-ilhad in the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only do we have to accept the name and affirm the name, we also have to accept the attribute related to it. We understood a little while ago that every name has an attribute related to it, right? There's a description that Allah can be described with. When you say Allah is Ar-Rahim, you're describing Him as one with mercy. When you say As-Sami', you're describing Him as one with hearing. Al-Alim as one with knowledge. And so on. Right? So part of accepting the names of Allah is to accept the description attached to that name. And again, like we said previously, do not assume that it means the same thing that you know in the creation, and do not reject it and refuse to affirm what is found in it. So we cannot say, for example, that Allah's mercy to His slaves is like the mercy of a mother to her children. You can't say that. Why not? Why can't you say that? Because there's nothing like Allah. Allah's mercy is far greater than the mercy of a mother to her children. Way, way greater. In fact, every mother that has mercy towards her children is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave her a tiny portion of mercy from the mercy that He created to spread between His slaves. Allah's mercy is vast. He said, وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. My mercy has encompassed everything. And the same can be said about every attribute of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. His knowledge is not like the knowledge of the slaves. His hearing is not like the hearing of the slaves, and so on. So all the attributes that are to be taken from the names are attributes that befit Allah's majesty and greatness. صِفَاتٌ تَلِيقُ بِجَلَالِ اللَّهِ وَعَظَمَتِهِ. Now, from the ilhad regarding the names of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is to assign names to Allah that you have no proof of. If a person doesn't have proof for it and he assigns a name to Allah, this is part of al-ilhad fi al-asma. Why is this? Because there is no way to access knowing His names without Him telling us. Telling us directly in His Quran or telling us by way of His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And if one was to assign a name to Allah, then that is considered actually what? Blasphemous. That is not good manners with Allah. That is very bad manners with Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Imagine us between humans, just so that we can understand this concept better. Between humans, right? Imagine you are invited to attend a king's banquet. And in the presence of the king, you say to the king, I've decided to give you a name, by the way. Your name is such and such. How does the king feel about you giving him a name? This is a human king. He does not accept from you to give him a name. Who are you to name me? Allah Azza wa Jal created us, and then we want to name Him. The names of Allah, the scholars say, are tawqifiyya. The names of Allah are textually based. You can only take the names of Allah from the Quran and from the Sunnah. By the way, there's an issue that a lot of people, like to know about. How many are the names of Allah? How many are the names of Allah?
99.
There are 99 names. Any other answer, or we all agree with this young man?
Many.
Huh?
No limit.
No limit. We have two answers now. Is there a third answer? هذا الدليل. نحن نريد الجواب أولا ثم ندلل. أجيب ثم دلل. This is the correct answer. The number of the names that Allah has is only known to Allah. It's only known to Allah. And the evidence is the famous dua that the Prophet ﷺ taught his ummah. Part of the dua, he said in it, أسألك, I ask you, O Allah, بكل اسم هو لك, by every name that belongs to you. سميت به نفسك, that you've named yourself with. Who names Allah? He names Himself. سميت به نفسك, أو أنزلته في كتابك, or that you revealed in your book. أو علمته أحدا من خلقك, or that you taught to any of your creation. أو, and this is the key here, استأثرت به في علم الغيب عندك, that you kept hidden in the knowledge of the unseen with yourself. There are names of Allah that He did not reveal to us. We don't know those names, nor do we know the attributes assigned to them, or found in them, I should say. So when Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِهِ عِلْمًا, they cannot encompass Him in knowledge. You have to understand that Allah is so great, He's beyond our ability to encompass all His descriptions, all His attributes, all His majesty, all His greatness. So al-ilhad, before that, So the names of Allah are not just 99. So what about that hadith that mentions the 99 names? The answer very briefly is the hadith teaches us that there are 99 names that have a special reward attached to them. That's the meaning of the hadith of the 99 names. Those particular 99 names out of the rest of Allah's names have a particular reward attached to them, and that is Man ahsaha dakhala al-jannah. Whoever captures these names, understands them, applies them into his life, then he will enter Al-Jannah. نسأل الله عز وجل أن يجعلنا جميعا من أهل الجنة. And by the way, this is a huge encouragement to learn about Allah. If you learn about Allah, you will love Him. There's no way around it. How do you learn about Allah? You just learn His names. You learn His names, you learn His description. If you learn His description, you understand why He does what He does. You become comfortable with obeying Him and following His religion, surrendering to His commands, trusting His choices for you. Al-Iman Al-Qayyim talks about this. He says in a very brief sentence, من عرف الله بأسمائه وصفاته أحبه لا محالة. Whoever comes to know Allah by His names and His attributes, truly, he will love Allah. There is no way around it. The heart cannot resist loving someone that has those descriptions that Allah has. القلوب مجبولة على حبه عز وجل خلقها هكذا. And that knowledge, by the way, saves you from what we just talked about a little while ago, which is سوء الظن بالله وذلكم ظنكم الذي ظننتم بربكم أرداكم. Right? Some of the people, their thoughts about Allah Azza wa Jal do not align with His names and His attributes, so they destroy themselves. So learning about Allah and learning about His names and attributes saves you from that and allows you to know Allah Azza wa Jal with His true descriptions. A person who does not understand who Allah is cannot truly predict and understand how Allah Azza wa Jal rules between His slaves. What are the sunan of Allah in the creation, and how Allah will judge the people fairly on the Day of Judgment, because he doesn't understand who Allah is and how Allah Azza wa Jal is like. So al-ilhad in the names of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala is two types. One is adding and one is subtracting. Adding, like for example, giving names to Allah that He didn't name Himself with. Subtracting is rejecting some of the names or rejecting the meaning that is found in them. And as for the people of the Sunnah, they accept the name and they name Allah with it. And they accept the description found in the name and they don't add anything to it. They leave it as it is. They leave it as it is. Yani how it's found in the Arabic language and how it's understood in the Arabic language, and they don't go beyond that. Now, there is an issue here that we can also mention regarding the names of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. It's good to know this. All of the names of Allah are Husna. Husna means they have reached the peak of perfection in their meanings. There's no names more beautiful than the names of Allah Azza wa Jal. And they are one of the secrets of the acceptance of dua. وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. Call upon Him with them. So if you use al-Asma' al-Husna in your dua is going to be answered. In fact, some of the names are so great that Allah Azza wa Jal has made it that He answers the dua that is inclusive of the use of those names. Such as the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ heard a Sahabi and he said, I swear by the one whom my soul is in his hand, he asked Allah by al-Ism al-A'zam, by the greatest name that Allah Azza wa Jal is called by, He answers, and if He's asked by, He gives, He grants. So learn the names of Allah. You'll find tremendous benefit. Now,
قال رحمه الله الأربعون التعطيل كقول آل فرعون.
The 40th issue from the issues of the people of Jahiliyyah is at-ta'til, like the statements of the people of Fir'aun. What is at-ta'til? Ta'til is to leave something and to ignore it and to strip it from its use and so on. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word mu'attala in the Quran. He described a well as bi'rin mu'attala. Bi'r is well, mu'attala means what? Abandoned, neglected. If you say regarding a neck, you call it jid mu'attala or jidun aatil. What does that mean? That neck has no necklace around it, no ornaments to beautify it. Jidun aatil. It's empty, void of any beautification or ornamentation. So at-ta'til is to rob the names of Allah of the meanings found in them. This is what we alluded to a little while ago. And the people of Fir'aun have fallen into this. To take away the meanings of the names of Allah and deem them as empty names with no meanings attached to them. This is the religion of Fir'aun. Now, how so? From the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Ali, correct? No. And from his names is Al-A'la. Right? سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى. Many of his names indicate the fact that Allah Azza wa Jalla is high and lofty and above the creation. As for Fir'aun, he refused to accept this. So out of mockery, he says, يا هامان ابن لي صرحا. Why? لعلي أبلغ الأسباب أسباب السماوات فأطلع إلى إله موسى وإني لأظنه كاذبا. Fir'aun said to Haman, build me a sarh, massive structure, something phenomenal. Why? لعلي أبلغ الأسباب أسباب السماء, so I can reach to the means of the heavens. He wants to get to the skies. What for? لعلي أطلع إلى إله موسى. فأطلع إلى إله موسى, such that I can look at the God of Musa. You think that if you go to the sky, you're going to see Allah Azza wa Jalla? This is mockery, right? And then he says, وَإِنِّي لَأَظُنُّهُ كَاذِبًا, and I think Musa is lying to us. And if I go up there, I don't see him, then Musa is lying. This is great mockery. And the strange thing is this, right? That Muslims who deny the names of Allah and the meanings found in them are actually following Fir'aun. And the Muslims who accept the names of Allah and the meanings found in them are following the prophets like Musa alayhi salatu wasalam and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And who wants to be like Fir'aun? وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. نعم.
قال رحمه الله: 41 مثلة النقائص إليه سبحانه كالولد والحاجة والتعب مع تنزيه ربانهم عن بعض ذلك.
The 41st issue is that they describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with shortcomings, with flaws. Like Allah having a child. This is a flaw. And Allah having needs. And Allah getting tired. While at the same time, they describe some of their worshippers as being free of all this. This is a strange contradiction, right? You describe the creation with some godlike qualities and describe Allah with some of the weakness of the creation. Now, why do we have children, by the way, as humans? Because of a need. We need this entertainment of having kids to love and raise them. We need kids that will help us in our old age, so we invest in them. We need kids that will worship Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, and thus we get the reward of raising them according to Islam. We have a need. Does Allah have needs? Allah doesn't have any needs. هو الغني. هو الغني. Azza wa Jal. He is the entirely self-sufficient. The absolutely self-sufficient. Azza wa Jal. Allah has no need of anyone or anything. He's completely self-sufficient. There's nothing external to him that he's in need of. And everything besides him needs him. Everything besides him needs him. أَنْتُمُ الْفُقَرَاءُ إِلَى اللَّهِ. You are the truly impoverished to Allah. In need of Allah. So attributing any kind of weakness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is disbelief in Allah's completion and perfection. And this is why you find that the messengers and the prophets, they describe Allah with perfection. And the enemies of the messengers and the prophets, they describe Allah with lacking and deficiency. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Exalted is your Lord, the Lord of power and might, above what they describe. Every deficiency they ascribe to Him, Allah is above that. He's greater than that. He's free of it. He's perfect. وَسَلَامٌ عَلَى الْمُرْسَلِينَ. And greetings be upon the messengers who uphold the truth regarding Allah's flawlessness, perfection, and completion. وَالْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. And all praises to the Lord of all creation. Allah deserves nothing but praise. Nothing but praise. He's perfect and flawless, Azza wa Jal. He's flawless in His attributes. His names are the most perfect. His actions are the most divine and wise. And His qadr is flawless. From any angle you look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you examine and you learn, you will find nothing but perfection. This is the aqidah of the Muslimin. And this is why we perform at-tasbih. What is tasbih? When you say subhanallah, what does it mean? Freeing Allah from defect and flaw. This is the meaning of at-tasbih. It's tanzih. نزه Allah عن النقائص وعن العيوب. As for these people, very strangely, they will free the creation from mistakes and flaws, and they will attribute the same mistakes and flaws to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. There's a very famous story that the Christians wanted to debate a Muslim. So the Muslimin sent a scholar to debate with these Christians. So the scholar, he wanted to highlight their contradiction to them and how they don't make any sense. So when they brought their priests to speak with the scholar, very nicely he met them and he greeted them and how are you doing and how is this and how is that. And then he says, and how's the wife and the kids? Now, as you know, a priest is supposed to be someone who took a vow of celibacy, right? Never marry, never have kids. Why? Because that is perfection. According to them, that is perfection. According to us, this is what? This is illogical. Doesn't make any sense. You're just torturing yourself in a way that doesn't bring you closer to Allah. This is self-torture. But anyway, he dropped that question, and the people listening to the conversation that were there, they were like, how dare you insult the priest? Don't you know that he doesn't have a wife and kids? So he immediately responds. He says, Subhanallah, you defend your priest from having this flaw according to you, but you attribute it to Allah, the Lord of all creation. These are the types of contradictions that the people of falsehood always fall into. They will never think in a straight line. They will always have contradictions. If you look, you will find them. Now,
قال رحمه الله: الثانية والأربعون الشرك في الملك كقول المجوس.
the 42nd issue from the issues of Al-Jahiliyyah is to assign some of the kingdom of Allah to other than Allah. Basically, that there are some people in the times of Al-Jahiliyyah who said Allah is not in control of everything. Allah is in control of a portion of existence, and the other portion is controlled by other than Allah. Like who? Like the Magians, the fire worshippers, also known as Zoroastrians. Those people used to believe in two creators, a creator of good and a creator of evil, the light and the darkness. And their belief system meant that there was a force for good fighting a force for evil, and they each create what supports their inclination. Obviously, they are extremely misguided. But just like the rest of these traits and aspects of Al-Jahiliyyah that we've seen so far, even this has shown its head and come back within this ummah. So you will find from the Muslims those people who say that Allah does not create everything. A famous group that has actually made a statement about this is the group known as Al-Qadariyyah. Al-Qadariyyah, they are misguided regarding destiny, predestination, pre-decree, the written decree of Allah Ta'ala. So they say that every slave creates his own actions. But Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't say that. Allah says in the Quran, Allahu khalaqakum wa ma ta'malun. Allah creates you and what you do. Allah creates the slave and He creates the actions of the slave. So we have to believe that there is no creator but Allah. He is the only creator. Even the pagan idol worshippers of Mecca used to believe that Allah is the only creator. So the Magians are more misguided than the pagans of Mecca. So for a Muslim to be more misguided than the pagans of Mecca and copy the Magians, this is terrible. This is really bad. So the correct understanding regarding the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that Allah has indeed decreed everything. قَدَّرَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ فَقَدَّرَهُ تَقْدِيرًا, created everything and decreed it. Everything is written with Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّ ذَلِكَ فِي كِتَابٍ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ عَلَى اللَّهِ يَسِيرٌ. Everything is written and that is easy for Allah. Allah Azza wa Jal created the pen, said to the pen, write. This is 50,000 years before the creation of the heavens and the earth. The pen said, what should I write, my Lord? Allah said, write down everything that will occur until the day of judgment. And you know, this statement is self-contradictory. When you say the slave creates his own actions, let me tell you something. If you build a robot, and that robot is designed to build a smaller machine, then you're the creator of that smaller machine too. So if Allah Azza wa Jal created the slave, then by default, He's the creator of every action the slave takes. The slave doesn't have independent power. Al-abd ليست له قوة مستقلة عن الله عز وجل. We keep saying لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. Why? Because we understand this. We don't have power and strength independent of Allah. We don't have the ability to do anything without Allah. If Allah Azza wa Jal does not supply us with strength, with eyes, with hearing, with sight, with a beating heart, everything comes to stop. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُمْسِكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ أَن تَزُولَ. Allah Azza wa Jal is sustaining the heavens and the earth from vanishing. If Allah does not supply His power, everything ceases to exist. We need to understand how powerful He is and how weak everything else is. There are not multiple creators, only one. Azza wa Jal, tabaraka fi ulah. This is why the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave a warning to the ummah from these types of claimants of Islam. He said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as found in Sunan Al-Iman Abi Dawud, pay attention to this hadith, on the authority of Abdullah ibn Umar. He said, Al-Qadariyyah majusu hadhihi al-ummah. The Qadariyyah are the Magians of this nation. Al-Qadariyyah are the Magians of this nation. So he actually is the one that gave them the name of Qadariyyah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Those who deny the destiny and decree of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala and say the slave creates his own actions. In maridu fala ta'uduhum. وَإِن مَاتُوا فَلَا تَشْهَدُوهُمْ. If they become sick, don't go visit them. And if they die, do not attend their funeral. They don't deserve your dua for and your well wishes for recovery or the mercy of Allah Ta'ala. Yeah, some of the worst of the creation of Allah Azza wa Jal. ولعلنا نكتفي بهذا القدر. I ask Allah Ta'ala to accept from all of us our efforts in attending this dawah, and that Allah Azza wa Jal make it beneficial for all of us. And I ask Him Azza wa Jal to continue the blessing upon this community of always coming together and benefiting, seeking knowledge, and aiding one another upon the path of Allah Azza wa Jal. We have some questions from yesterday. Maybe we can try to tackle some of them right now. And also some questions from today. If I don't answer a question, it's either because we ran out of time or I don't know the answer. There's a question. A questioner states, how do you regain al-azimah ala rushd and shake off the complacency that one feels when they are making do with just the obligatory duties? The questioner is using the word regain, meaning that at one point in time, they were not just sufficing with the obligations, they were going beyond that. And they're also using the term al-azima al-rushd. Al-azima al-rushd is having determination and zeal in the pursuit of beneficial things. How do you regain that if you've lost it? Well, number one, try to figure out why you lost it. If it's lost because of sins, then the path is to repent to Allah. Also, the words al-azima al-rushd are found in a dua, meaning the Prophet ﷺ used these words. So one of the keys to regaining al-azima al-rushd is to ask Allah for al-azima al-rushd. Number three, one of the things that is known to cause determination and zeal to weaken is being overwhelmed. There's a concept in psychology, it's called decision fatigue. I don't know if you guys heard about this. Decision fatigue is basically when a person is faced with a lot of complex situations all the time, and every complex situation requires a decision. If you come to a point where you run out of capacity, and this is called decision fatigue, where a person becomes basically paralyzed. They just can't muster the energy needed to analyze deeply and figure out what they're going to do, or what is the correct decision to make. This is a common cause for not having determination and zeal to pursue very beneficial projects. So if you're overwhelmed, if you've got too much going on, simplify your life. Make a conscious effort to drop some projects. maybe you've taken on too much. You've bitten off more than you can chew. And always prefer the akhirah over the dunya. Also, determination is from Allah. So seek Allah's help. This is number 4. When you say La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, you're asking Allah Azza wa Jal to strengthen you. So make that word your hallmark, your motto, your MO, all the time. Leave it on your tongue. Keep it in your mouth. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Beseeching Allah for strength from Him. This is how you regain al-azima al-rushd. There's more that you can do besides what I've mentioned, but this is just an example. How do you differentiate between the evil eye and a trial or a tribulation? There's no differentiation. They're one and the same. The evil eye is a trial. It's a tribulation. But it's a tribulation that is treatable. It's a treatable trial. The evil eye is treatable by the permission of Allah Ta'ala. The treatment depends on the situation. If you know the person that evil-eyed you, you ask them for their wudu water. They make wudu, and the leftover water that they've used to make wudu, that touch their body, that touch their limbs, touch their skin, use that water and pour it upon the person who got evil-eyed. At the risk of repeating myself, I'm going to mention a story that occurred in the masjid of Al-Iman ibn Hadi Wadi, rahmatullahi alayhi. A young man got up and started reciting hadith from memory when the Shaykh requested, the students show what they have. And the young man did such a tremendous job, everybody was impressed. And then he fell to the ground instantly. The Shaykh suspected immediately that this is evil eye, so he requested the guards to close the doors of the masjid. So all the doors were locked. And he said, Ya Ikhwan, bring some water. Everybody has to make wudu. Myself included. I'm going to make. So he made everybody make wudu. Using the water in those big dishes that were brought. And Shaykh himself made wudu. And then all of that water was poured on that young man. And subhanAllah, he got up like nothing had happened. So this is medicine from the Sunnah. This is a prophetic medicine. But this only works if you know or have suspicion that the evil eye came from one particular person or a set of people. It's not going to be anyone besides these people. This works when you have that. Now, when you don't have that, then it's al-ruqyah. Al-ruqyah bil-Quran. To recite Quran upon yourself, if you're the person that's been evil-eyed, or upon your loved one. Let's say it's your child, so you recite the Quran upon them, and Allah Azza wa Jalla will cure them by that. You trust in Allah Azza wa Jalla to cure your child by the barakah of the Quran, or your loved one, or yourself. So evil eye is a trial. It's not outside of trials, it's part of the trials. This is another good question. Can a believer become depressed? The answer is no and yes. If you mean by depressed, extremely sad, yes, a believer can become extremely sad, and that doesn't mean he's not a believer. But if you mean by depressed as in unwilling to get out of bed, even to the point that they miss salah, then obviously this is not a believer. Obviously this is not a believer. Yaqub, the great prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam, the son of Ishaq and the grandson of Ibrahim, he became sad. How sad? Allah said, وَابْيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. And his eyes turned white from sadness, for he was holding it in. The amount of sadness that would cause blindness is a tremendous amount of sadness. But is the Prophet going to abandon the duties and the obligations that are upon him required by Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala? The answer is obviously what? No. So tremendous sadness can be an affliction that a believer will go through. But if it leads to the symptoms of depression that we know today, unwillingness to do the basic things Person doesn't take a shower for days, doesn't get out of their room for days, doesn't speak to anybody, doesn't want to eat. No, this is not how a believer is, for sure. Although Yaqub was in that state, he was worshipping Allah, he was performing his prayers, and above all, he knew for a fact that the solution is near at hand and Allah will bring the relief. And he used to teach his sons, go and search for Yusuf. Bring me information about Yusuf. Do not give up hope on the mercy of Allah. He was the saddest of all of them, and he would say to them, do not lose hope in the mercy of Allah. So this is how the believer experiences sadness. It is not crippling sadness, but it can be painful. Another question. What does a person do when they feel that the community they are in looks down upon them? There's two things here. Maybe one of them I can talk about before I talk about the question itself, right? If someone is trying to come close to Allah Azza wa Jal, and they want to change their ways, and they want to fix themselves, how should the community that used to be weary of such a person, how should the community react to that? They're a hypocrite, they're just trying to fake their way to, get something? Is that how we react? Huh? No. The reaction is what? Welcome back. We missed you. Where you been? We want you to be with us. Not just you. We want everybody on the face of the earth to be with us. Even the Jews and the Christians, if they accept Islam, they become immediately what? Our brothers and our sisters. Let alone a Muslim that was sinning. They're already our brother or our sister. So if they come back to the correct path, we are happy. Why are we happy? Because Allah is happy. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave a huge story explaining how happy Allah is when someone repents. Huge story. Expressing tremendous happiness from Allah at the repentance of a slave. So, in answer to this question, if the community is looking at you a certain way because, they maybe are considering your history or what you've done in the past, do not be concerned with that. The intelligent and the righteous from among them will see your sincerity. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring their hearts to you, because it is Allah Azza wa Jal that is in control of the hearts of the people. So if Allah loves you, people will love you too. So concern yourself only with Allah Azza wa Jal. Now let's say the person was in a situation where there is just absolutely no way to deal with the community, and the community is being very rough and harsh and not willing to give the person a chance and so on and so forth. I would say change community. Go to a different community that is lenient, merciful, brotherly, and filled with love according to the deen of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. But this is only a last resort. Step number one is focus on the relationship between you and Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. There's another question here about being a soccer player professionally, making money from that. No, don't do that. Find something beneficial to do with your life. Do not be another distraction. The Muslims have enough distractions in their life. Watching a bunch of people running around after a ball is not just going to make the Muslims better. If you want to play soccer, go play soccer. But don't distract the people with your playing soccer and make them pay for you playing soccer. If you want to play soccer, go play soccer. For health, just make sure you're covered properly and that none of your awra is showing, and that you don't miss your salah and it doesn't distract you from anything. And consider it as part of your maintaining your health and shaking off some of the burdens of daily life and, getting a little change of scenery and environment, hanging out with some people you like. But don't let it go beyond that. There's no such thing as a professional soccer player. This is just today's culture. This is entertainment. Why are you okay with being an entertainer? Are you of such low value that you have nothing to offer the people except for entertainment? This culture where entertainers have been pumped up to the point that they've become the celebrities is a failed culture. People who sing, people who dance, people who know how to do certain tricks or know how to chase the ball so accurately have become the highest valued people in society. What kind of society is this? They have more value than scientists, than people who have made discoveries that have changed the face of the world. More value than the scholars of the religion. This is crazy. Do not add to the problem. Do not be a professional soccer player. Be a professional worshipper of Allah Ta'ala and make your rizq elsewhere. Make your money elsewhere. This is a question that requires a lecture. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. O you have believed, protect yourselves and your families from a fire fueled by men and stones. Questioner is saying, in this time where the fitan are looking at us from every direction, how can we save ourselves? This is not something that I can cover in a question in the last few minutes of a Q&A session. But what I can tell you is the meaning of the word taqwa. Allah said, Qu anfusakum, qu from taqwa. Protect yourselves. What is the meaning of taqwa? أن تعمل بطاعة الله على نور من الله ترجو ثواب الله وأن تترك معصية الله على نور من الله خيفة عذاب الله. This is the meaning of taqwa. That you obey Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala based on the revelation of Allah, based on what He revealed, seeking His reward. And that you leave off disobedience to Allah. Leave off disobedience to Allah based on the revelation of Allah and the forbiddances in it for fear of the punishment of Allah. That's how you protect yourself and your family from the fire fueled by men and stones. Fulfilling the obligations and leaving off the prohibitions. And in order to accomplish that, you have to create that environment that allows you to do so. Yes, it may involve some drastic measures and some very firm steps, but you decide. Drastic measures and firm steps is easier, or the hellfire is easier. La shak, and being firm with yourself and your family is a lot simpler than having to deal with al-adhab al-shadid. Na'udhu billah min adhabillah. Have anger issues. This person is complaining of being overly emotional and having anger issues. The Messenger ﷺ has good news for you. He said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إِنَّمَا الْحِلْمُ بِالتَّحَلُّمِ. Forbearance is only acquired by practice. I'm translating loosely, bear with me. Forbearance is only acquired by practice. Tahallum is to practice forbearance. Al-Hilm is having forbearance. I'm going to mention to you a story that kind of puts this a little bit into perspective. One of the tabi'een became very famous for his forbearance. How calm and chill he was when people were very rude around him, so on and so forth. Scholars mention in the books of Al-Adab, books of manners, how he got to that point. He wanted to become very distinguished in his manners. didn't like where he was. So he decided to engage in a training course. He went to a man who was known for his safah, his ill manners, his rudeness, and complete lack of shyness. And he gave him money, a big sum of money. He said to him, listen, this money is in exchange for you following me around wherever I go, and I'm sitting with people of respect and dignity, and I want you to call me names and taunt me. He said, say what? He said, yeah, and if you do that for a whole month, I'll give you the exact same amount again. I need you to do this for a month. So the guy, given how rude he is and how much he enjoys bad manners, he didn't feel like it was work. This was pleasure and money at the same time. He said, you got it. So every time this nobleman was sitting with the scholars and people of respect and, people that he must maintain his honor in front of them, all of a sudden this man would pop up and start calling him names and taunting him and describing him with things that are untrue and accusing him of things. And even when he became enraged at the treatment and the words being said, he couldn't say anything. Why can't he say anything? Because he paid for this. If he says anything to him or tries to fight with him or tell somebody, please, deal with this guy, the guy's going to say, you paid me for this thing. They're going to expose him, so he can't be exposed. So he forced himself to stay quiet, no matter how much his blood boiled. But as time progressed, by the end of the month, he was no longer the person that started the month. It had become easy for him to control his emotions. And he became so good at it that he became a person, as the Arabs say, يُضْرَبْ بِهِ الْمَثَلِ. So that people would actually say when they want to praise you, they say, you have more forbearance than so and so, and they would mention his name. This is maybe this is a quiz. Who is the man I'm talking about? Someone could find this, inshallah. This is a quiz for the brothers. So this is my advice, right? If you have issues with your emotions and your conduct, train yourself. Al-hilmu bit-tahallum. Forbearance is by training. طيب. A person is in college at the same time seeking knowledge. Which one do I give preference or precedence to? Which one do I put first? The answer is combine between the two. Allah Azza wa Jalla said, وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. Do not forget your portion of the dunya. Combine between the two. Never stop seeking the knowledge of your deen. You have to learn your deen. You have to learn your aqidah, your salah. Before that, your wudu. You have to learn the rules of fasting. If you're about to get married, you have to learn the rules that surround that, how to treat your spouse, what are the rights of your spouse, so that you don't meet Allah Azza wa Jalla with any shortcomings regarding your spouse's rights. If you're a parent, let's say you're already married and you're about to become a parent, you have to learn how to raise your kids, so on and so forth. Seeking knowledge is essential. If there's ever a conflict that you cannot solve, then do your best to combine between the two. But forever, the akhirah comes before the dunya. And this is a test for all of us. Sometimes Allah will test us with creating a conflict in our path between the akhirah and the dunya. Allah wants to see who fears Him. لِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ مَنْ يَخَافُهُ بِالْغَيْبِ. So that Allah will know who are the people that fear Him while they do not see Him. Always put the akhirah first. Inshallah, I'm going to take maybe one more question. I feel bad keeping all the brothers sitting down. This is an important question, I think, maybe for some of us. How do you recommend going about learning? The knowledge of the deen is vast, It's like an ocean. And yet we have so many other obligations that we need to balance. So the answer to that is the knowledge of the deen is categorized into two categories. The scholars call them fardul ayn wal fardul kifai. That which is obligatory upon individuals and that which is obligatory upon groups. Let me give you an example. Let's say the person asking this question was a wealthy person. Every wealthy person needs to have knowledge of the rules of zakah because wealthy people, they owe zakah. This is called an individual obligation. It's obligatory upon you specifically to know the rules of zakah. Why? Because you're wealthy. Let's say the person asking this question is a woman. You have to know the rules of purity that relate to women with things related to menses, postpartum bleeding, etc. Because these are things that are going to come across your path in your life. Nobody else can suffice you this knowledge. This is called an individual obligation. Fardu ayn. The other type of knowledge is a fard al-kifai, that which is obligatory upon us as a group. Like the knowledge of the rules of inheritance. Not every single Muslim is obligated to learn the rules of inheritance. But enough of us have to learn these rules. Enough of us have to learn these rules. Such that the knowledge will always remain with the ummah, and there are people who can answer the questions of the rest of us who do not have this knowledge. So the knowledge of the inheritance is an example of what the ummah needs to maintain as a whole, and not every individual from amongst us has to learn. So if you understand this, then you understand my answer. I'm saying, learn that which is obligatory upon you specifically first. Learn that which relates to your belief system. Allah is going to ask you about your beliefs. In fact, these are the first questions you'll be asked once you reach the afterlife. Man rabbuk, ma dinuk, man hadha ar-rajul alladhi bu'itha fikum. You'll be asked about your deen. You should know enough about your deen. You're going to be asked about your Lord. You should know enough about your Lord. And you're going to be asked about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his messengerhood. You should definitely know enough about that. That's aqidah. And then when you stand in front of Allah Azza wa Jalla on the Day of Judgment, after the resurrection, the first of your deeds you're going to be asked about is your salah. And that determines whether a person is going to Jannah or the hellfire. Right? That one question is the determinant of that. So you have to learn about your salah. Learn enough to fix your salah, uphold it, correct it, perfect it. نسأل الله أن يجعلنا جميعا ممن يقيم الصلاة. So these are examples. You have to look at your situation, what applies to you, what is your life about, what is going on in your life, and then decide from there what are the obligatory types of knowledge that are an individual obligation upon me specifically. Now, I'm going to mention one last thing here, and that is sometimes the obligation of the ummah as a whole becomes the obligation of a specific individual. When is that? And you were just talking about the rules of inheritance right now, correct? And then we said that's not an obligation upon any specific one of us. It just has to be covered by some of us. Some of us have to learn it so that the rest are no longer excused. They are excused in the eyes of Allah and they are no longer held liable. But when is it that we can assign that this particular person must learn the rules of inheritance? When do we assign the group obligation to a specific individual? No.
If he has someone passed away and he needs to know.
No. This is where they have to ask about that particular case, but not learn the entirety of the rules of inheritance.
No one else do it. Nobody else has to know it.
This is the correct answer, but let me rephrase it so it becomes clearer. When that person is in a position that is unique, that makes them the most suited for this, whether it's because everybody else cannot do it, let's say he's in a community of people that are all incapable of doing it for some reason, or they are particularly equipped. Someone is just very bright, very intelligent. The knowledge of the religion comes to them like drinking water. As soon as they pick up a book, they understand it right away. If an ayah is read to them, the ayah just starts to open up and unfold its secrets, and they come to the person. They have some particular merits. Then the knowledge that is for the rest of us a group obligation becomes an individual obligation upon that person. When Allah qualifies you to become a scholar, you don't take advantage of that qualification. A person could be asked about the fard al-kifai min al-ulum. Now, the questions I did not answer, it's either because we didn't have time, I wish I could, or I don't know the answer. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward you all for your participation and your keenness. And I ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make this beneficial for us. And may Allah always gather us upon good. Jazakumullah khairan for the hospitality and the welcome that this community has shown. May Allah accept it from you. May Allah honor you all. Assalamu alaikum.